Growing up with an abusive father and bullied at school, Sean Davis is now the sole supporter of his mum and 10-year-old sister, Lily. At 22, it's a huge load to bear.
Every day having to watch my mum being hurt and going through that was quite traumatic. I still suffer from depression and anxiety. It's been getting worse.
And for the counsellors at Kids Helpline, Sean's story is all too familiar.
We are seeing more and more young people actually needing counselling. I don't think there's one reason. The pandemic, uncertainty about climate, stresses that are happening in families.
Demand is so high, a new Kids Helpline impact report shows the service is failing children, with 56% of calls and messages going unanswered.
The concern for young people who don't get through or don't get through at their first attempt, they may not seek help again. And the consequence of that can be, I think, catastrophic.
Without having someone to talk to, honestly, I feel like I'd be on quite the edge of just not wanting to be here anymore.
Around 330,000 children contacted Kids Helpline last year. Pre-COVID, the average call time was around 7 minutes. Now it's sitting at close to 45.
We're seeing young people often present with complex mental health. We're seeing counsellors having to deal with more emergency interventions, which take a lot of time. All of that impacts the capacity to continue then to meet the demand.
Kids Helpline is a vital, free resource for young people who don't often have the means to afford help, even if they could find a psych appointment. And without an urgent funding increase, experts fear more vulnerable children will fall through the cracks.
Out of the 100 or so crisis interventions our counsellors instigate every week, suicide and child abuse are the top two. We need more resources. We need more funding.
Mellis Lake has experienced her own mental health issues and is now a youth advocate, and she joins us now. Mellis, why do you think we're seeing such a huge spike?
Well, when we talk about youth mental health, we really can't separate it from the cost of living crisis. When you're barely able to make your rent and can't find meaningful employment, it's really hard to look after your mental well-being. A lot of young people right now can't really find a place to live. Landlords are constantly increasing rent. You know, to get to a therapist, it's often a 3 or 4 month wait, and the youth allowance and job seeker rate are under the poverty line. So, yeah, it's really hard to be in a mentally well state when those are all of the economic factors surrounding young people right now.
Mellis, the Kids Helpline has been a lifeline for so many young people, but the stats are really alarming. 56% of calls made to the line are going unanswered, and you have been in that situation. What happened to you?
I have, unfortunately. So I personally have suffered with multiple mental health illnesses, anxiety, depression, and most prominently an eating disorder, which had me in a really, really horrible spot in my life. And this was a few years ago. I was feeling extremely helpless and really alone, and I called Lifeline. Unfortunately, I was placed on hold for about 20 or 25 minutes, and I ended up hanging up. For me, that honestly made me feel even more alone and more destitute, and I sadly ended up self-harming in that instance, and I know that that's sadly not a unique experience. I've heard a lot of people, as you've just said, have been trying to access help, and due to the lack of resources, I guess, for things like Lifeline or Kids Helpline, yeah, a lot of people aren't getting through. It's really, really unfortunate. It needs to be addressed.
Now, you mentioned Kids Helpline. They're the first to say that they're failing. Now, the budget's just an hour away. What do you hope to see?
Well, for the budget, I really hope to see an increase in funding for all mental health services, but specifically health services for young people, since we are struggling so much. And yeah, generally trying to increase resources and funding for early intervention so that we're not just helping young people when it comes to a crisis, but we're actually working to prevent young people from getting to that point in the first place.
We'll have our eyes peeled for what is in the budget tonight, Mellis. Thank you so much for walking us through it.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
We've just heard that they are completely inundated at the moment, but they are still there for support if you do need help. The Kids Helpline number is 1800 555 1800, or you can call Lifeline on 131114.